So yeah, I'm just going to hand over to Eva now.
Hello, everyone. Thanks a million, Lucy. Thanks a million for coming along today. As Lucy said, this is the first episode in a series of capacity building information webinars, and today we're focusing on equality, diversity, and inclusion. So I'm Aoife Tunney, and I'm joined by Lucy Tevlin. We're also joined by Leona Cully from the Creative Europe desk, and we're delighted to welcome Hannah Gordis, sorry, from EDI in the Arts Council of Ireland. We'll hand it over to her in a couple of moments, and she'll be delivering a piece around the toolkit for EDI that the Arts Council have developed and how organizations can be continuing their journey within the practices of EDI or start their journey. So it depends, obviously, where you're at the moment. So I'm going to kick off. Thanks, Lucy. We'll go to the first slide. And this series of events where we've developed just short, bite-size information webinars with our experts throughout the series. And as I said, Hannah Gordis will be delivering a presentation in a while. But we've decided just to keep them short, not too onerous. Obviously, we will have time for questions at the end. So it's going to be a quick enough session today. We'll move on and I'll start just with a little introduction. So you may as well know well at this point that the Creative Europe Desk Ireland has three offices. We have the media office in Dublin and the media office in Galway, and we are the culture office. We work underneath the culture sub-program of the Creative Europe program, and we are hosted by our national hosts. It hosts the Arts Council of Ireland. So what we do as a desk, briefly, what we do is we try at the core of all our work is to reach as varied and as wide a sector as we can within the creative and culture sector in Ireland. So how we do that, we have information sessions like this. We advise and assist, and we're trying to really reach out to people or organizations to access the Creative Europe program. So whether doing that, we promote it at local level, at regional level, we attend many events across the year. Or we host our own events, obviously, as well, a program of events for different calls, and whether that's for organizations or artists. So we work and collaborate with key sectoral stakeholders and agencies. We have an expanded collaboration with the Creative Europe Desk Network. Recently, we've been partaking and planning for this year a number of events around certain calls within the Creative Europe program, where we were working with our desk network with various other countries, and whether that's kind of trying to incentivize partnerships or looking for clear kind of partner searches for various organizations and projects around a certain cause. So keep an eye out for these kind of opportunities that come up, because it's a great way to kind of jump across the borders and reach those other partnerships or organizations within Europe. We also have developed a cross-sectoral, a cross-sectoral partnership with our media office. So we work on collaborate on events in the cross-sector space across the year as well. Yeah, we'll go to the next. We go to the next. So just briefly, why does the European Union fund culture? So culture really has an intrinsic value and benefit to society, and we kind of know this now, the benefits it has across society to partake and to feel like you belong within a culture and creative sector within Europe. It is embedded across various treaty commitments over the years, and then links broadly to EU policy more recently, and there are different policies and strategies there that we can see that the European Commission have developed over the years, and really the funding for culture across the European Commission aligns with these policies and strategies, including the Creative Europe program. So, sorry, the next slide there, Lucy. So as I said, the Creative Year program aligns with the Commission's strategy, and they cover areas such as the rights of persons with disabilities, the gender equality strategy, and then the commitment is reflected in various other policy initiatives outlined, as I said, in the new European Agenda for Culture, and the work plans for culture, the most recent 2023 to 26. So in that way, projects under the Creative Europe program will contribute to what the commissions have set out as their equality strategies. And these cover, again, equality initiatives such as on gender equality, anti-racism, and fighting anti-Semitism. So there's a lot covered there in their policy and strategies. And we're not saying to go out and read everything word for word, but it is the background context for where this program is kind of aligning and what they want you to be considering, and gives you kind of more information to how to set out on your own kind of journey and your own proposals for the application for cooperation projects. And Lucy, sorry, thank you. Um, so how do the EU fund culture? There are various ways. So there are direct funding actions, the European Capital of Culture, and the prizes in various areas, music, architecture, literature, and cultural heritage. Then there's the centrally administered program, and that's the Creative Europe program. And at the moment, we're in 2021 to 2027. The funding for 2021 to 2027 is 2.4 billion, and that's across the media and culture and cross-sectoral strands. So we're coming towards the end of this program. The culture priorities in general across all of the calls look at resilience and recovery. Obviously, post-COVID is was a real kind of instigator there in funding for this year for this program. So there was increased funding trying to build up and the resilience and recovery for the sector. Oh, there's obviously other issues within Europe, as we know, in various wars, ongoing wars. So this is trying to make the sector more resilient in the eye of that. Innovation and joint creation, really looking at how culture can be innovative and how joint creation across borders can deliver more results working together in those partnerships, again, around cooperation and exchange of practice, how artists and how organizations and artists can swap and exchange and learn from each other. Key players and multipliers. So the key players being the organizations, the consortium within the projects, but also the multipliers, how that embeds and works down from the people and the artists and the organizations that are working with the projects on the ground nationally. And then again, capacity building of artists, always a key kind of priority across the program. And more specifically, what we're looking at today is the overarching priority. So as you might be aware, in the last call or in the few calls before that, priorities were called cross-cutting priorities, and you could select the various ones that you might be working and addressing with, but these are now overarching priorities, so you must address the four of these priorities. And what we're looking at, obviously, today is gender equality and social inclusion. And what we move on to the next slide, just briefly. So this is where it comes up in the first part of the application form, and how you'll be asked is explain what in the project design and in its implementation will specifically contribute to them, to these overarching priorities. So you really are asked to drill down, and here you'll be giving there, you've got a space to insert your kind of answer and how you're going to implement, and what within your project design, how does it address EDI. So it's very black and white, very clear how you've to respond to this, but there's also a number of, you've got 50 pages within your proposal document where you can kind of drill down again more and kind of develop your ideas. The next slide, please. Thanks, Katie. Or Katie, Lucy. So funded projects, as I said, must address these topics in the design and implementation phase, And there is special focus in the assessment, in the process and the assessment, where they really place a focus on the strategies that are put forward by applicants. So you must guarantee that social inclusion and gender balance are really at the heart and really are being addressed within the design and implementation. And the last slide before I hand over to Hannah. So just as shining lights in a European perspective, so from the Creative Europe projects gone, and more recently a newer one. So Europe Beyond Access with an Irish partner, the Project Arts Centre is a great project just out of interest to look up as a kind of case study. Swan, Sing with Additional Needs, and that it's an Irish partner, Sing Ireland, again, very much focused on access, a project based wholly in access um, and EDI. But the other project there is called Access Practices and Habits, and the Irish partner is Askeaton, which you might be aware of, Askeaton Contemporary Arts. And I thought this was interesting because whereas it's a contemporary arts project or organization working within this consortium, but the consortium kind of sets it out that it aims to develop accessibility as a creative practice at the heart of our work as arts organizations. Addressing the priority of social inclusion, we depart from the need for small-scale contemporary arts organizations to cultivate better structural access practices that are integral to every facet of our work, encompassing our staff, our curatorial practices, and the engagement with our audience. And I will send that on to you, but I think it's a nice kind of bit of text where they're contextualized their approach within their organization themselves and then their program. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Hannah. I'm delighted to welcome her. We'll stop sharing and she'll lead you through the toolkit. Thanks, Hannah.
Thanks very much. Let me just get my screen up for everyone. Is that showing full screen?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, perfect. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for coming today, and thanks for having me to the Creative Europe team. I'm Hannah. I'm the EDI officer here at the Arts Council, and I'm just going to take you through our Equality, Diversity, and Inclusion Toolkit. There's a brief slide just kind of giving you an overview of our policy, and then we'll get into the toolkit. And as Lucy said before, we'll be taking questions at the end, but also feel free to put them in the chat so we can come back to them. So, as the agency tasked with the development of the arts in Ireland, it's crucial that the Arts Council takes a proactive and focused approach to guaranteeing a basic human right, which is ensuring that everyone who lives in Ireland has the opportunity to engage with and participate in the arts. So in publishing our policy, we committed to taking actions over the course of the coming years to actively deepen our understanding of inequalities in the arts and develop substantive ways to address them. So in our policy, we recognize that it must be embedded from the outset in our institutional structure and practice, and we're working towards ensuring that our board, staff, advisors, and panelists best reflect and represent the diversity of contemporary Ireland. So the toolkit itself was developed out of a key action from our implementation plan and is meant to support organizations in implementing positive policy measures to promote equality of opportunity, access, and outcomes for everyone living in Ireland. Your organization or practice will need to address perception, representation, and accessibility barriers, and this can be achieved through meaningful collaboration and the shared knowledge of good practices. So the toolkit should prompt your thinking around EDI values with a focus on continuous reflection. We should always be changing and improving and doing more. It's important to say that when you're embarking on your EDI policy development journey or any kind of EDI journey, you just need to accept that you're going to make mistakes and you may run into failures. It's a fairly new field, but doing something imperfectly is better than doing nothing at all. So while the toolkit aims to provide suggestions for reflection that will lead to the development of an EDI policy, your commitment to EDI should be founded on an openness to challenging current practices on an ongoing basis with the goal of eliminating discrimination. So just some practical information about the toolkit itself. It was designed to be accessible with plain English text, accessible visual design from a company that specializes in accessible design. It uses large font and readable color contrast, and the entire toolkit is hyperlinked. So it's not only easy to navigate through and within the document, but also to resources that we refer to. And most importantly, it's publicly available. So when you're designing your own policy, it should also be accessible. The National Disability Authority has a resource site on universal design, and the National Adult Literacy Agency advises on plain English writing. The toolkit also includes a glossary of terms as well as a list of resource organizations and other kind of useful publications. So the toolkit facilitates the creation of a policy that suits the needs of your organization. So it's not meant to tell you what to do, but rather it's a guide to help you think differently. It gathers good practice examples through case studies of arts organizations and includes practical tools and templates. These will help you understand your organization's strengths and areas for improvement, how to evaluate EDI in relation to your practices, and to help you prioritize actions that are most important to your team and if you have a board. So the toolkit was informed by 4 case studies. These organizations were chosen because we felt that they did an exemplary job of reflecting on their own needs. The case studies are meant to show different ways of thinking since you'll have to find out what works for you. So I'm just going to go through a kind of whistle-stop tour of each of the case studies. So starting with Children's Book Ireland, their mission is to inspire a love of reading in children and young people in Ireland. Their case study centered on developing their policy and action plan, which is called Free to Be Me, the Diversity, Inclusion, and Representation Reading Guide, which features over 370 books for children and young people. These books highlight stories about marginalized backgrounds and showcase diversity with particular reference to disability, gender, race and ethnicity, religion, sexuality, and socioeconomic status. And it includes characters who are members of the traveling community, who are neurodivergent, and who come from non-traditional family types. This came from a full organizational EDI audit facilitated by an external expert, which looked at their board, their recruitment process, the audiences that they reach, and the artists that they work with. So they identified short-term and long-term actions where work was needed, like the accessibility of their office space, their hiring processes, and the diversity of their board. They also created a program of professional development supports for authors and illustrators from marginalized backgrounds. To produce Free to Be Me, they put together a panel of 8 editors and reviewed 1,750 books that were submitted by publishers. Then they created a style guide and shared it with their 184 reviewers. And then 30,000 copies of these books were published and sent to every school and library authority on the island of Ireland. And I really just wanted to kind of pull some attention to this quote from their case study, which is that we will undoubtedly make mistakes or produce imperfect work, but we can learn from the process and be open about the goals that we're working towards. So it just calls back to what I was saying earlier. It's better to do something imperfectly than to do nothing at all. And having a foundation of kind of openness and transparency in the work that you're doing, speaking with people in your community and working across and outside of your own organization just improves the sector for everyone. So then Project Art Centre is our next case study. They're Ireland's National Centre for Contemporary Arts, and it's based in Dublin. Their case study looked at the development of their EDI policy, which was informed by an advisory group that they created during the pandemic. So the advisory group held a series of in-depth discussions with over 30 artists, social activists, arts workers, and creatives from diverse backgrounds. They worked with their members, staff, and board to respond to the recommendations that came from the advisory group, which then informed their new policy. I really love the title of their policy, which is Towards Equality, Diversity, and Inclusion. I think it makes it very kind of actionable and forward-looking. At all stages, they involved their staff and carried out access audits of their building and their physical space, their website, and their arts programs. They also established an evaluation and monitoring group, which was made up of members of their board, staff, and their members. And that oversaw the rollout of their policy and evaluated the impact of it. They inform their strategy and thinking with the Arts Council's EDI policy and strategy, the Employment Equality Acts, the Equal Status Acts, and Section 2 of the Irish Human Rights and Equality Act, which is the public sector equality and human rights duty. Third is Galway Community Circus, and they're Ireland's flagship organization for youth and social circus. They created their EDI policy from their previous policy, which was called Join In, and included EDI as its own development area in their strategic plan. So in 2020, they looked at their organization structure, people, and program to see where they could improve and how they could do this. They identified any areas needing change or review and began conversations with the appropriate people. Within art form development, they have EDI initiatives such as the Circus Transformation Training course, which is supported nationally by the Arts Council. And they're also revising their organization structure starting at the board level. And I also wanted to call attention to a quote from their case study. Our programs and organization have to reflect our community, otherwise we are missing something vital within the services we provide. So again, it's just making sure that the work you're doing is reflective of your audience, the people that you work with, the artists that you work with, and you're responding to their needs. So lastly, and apologies for my pronunciation, but we've got Uillinn West Cork Arts Centre, which creates opportunities for people of West Cork to have access to and engagement with local and global arts practices of excellence. So in 2022, Uillinn announced Creaglan Integrated Dance as their dance company in residence, which highlights the value of diverse bodies in creating performance, working with dancers with and without disabilities to produce innovative, engaging, and high caliber productions and to deliver associated participatory activities. So their work with Creaglan contributed to the development of their strategic plan and informed a series of key actions. So these included working with diverse communities, examining how they think about, understand, and measure their audiences and participants, and taking positive actions that reflect the diversity of their community through their exhibitions, residencies, and creative learning programs. So in summary, all the case studies did some form of auditing and measurement and evaluation to inform their subsequent actions, but each organization did it in a way that suited the identity of their organization and the way they work. So you'll have all your own priorities at your organizations, but the following elements are generally key for everyone. So first is continuous reflection. Reflect on why you're writing your EDI policy, what your organization's strengths and weaknesses are. The policy should be a living document that's continuously reflected on and updated. Second is representation matters. Your policy must represent and consider whose voices, experiences, and needs are being heard and whose are being silenced and why this is happening. An interesting way to kind of reframe how you view this is not who's being underrepresented, but rather who's being excluded, because this puts the onus of inclusion and representation on you as the organization rather than on the individual who isn't represented. And then third is measurement and accountability. The policy you develop should be workable with measurable outcomes and clear lines of accountability to ensure long-term changes. This will help you reflect on policy actions to keep improving. So if any of you have seen our implementation plan that we've published, you'll notice that each action is categorized under a kind of general area, and then specifically one of our senior managers who is accountable for that action. And then we have someone who works on the project underneath them who is directly reporting into them. And then each action has kind of a list of measurable outcomes according to each action that we can then look back and see if they've been delivered on. So you can ensure that you're doing this by making sure that your goals are SMART. So they're specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So for example, you might decide that your goal is to gain a broader perspective on the diversity of the artists that you work with. Maybe you run a residency program. This will help to begin identifying any potential barriers to inclusion and to establish a baseline against which change can be measured. So to achieve this goal, your plan this year is to collect equality data by designing and delivering an artist survey. focusing on the 9 protected characteristics and socioeconomic status. So this goal is specific because you've identified a particular area in which you can make a change. It's measurable because you have data that can be collected and analyzed annually. It's achievable because the survey can be incorporated into an existing selection process. It's relevant because the change fits within your wider agenda to diversify the artists you engage with. And it's time-bound because you aim to implement the survey in the next round of the selection process and annually thereafter. At the end of the toolkit is a workbook section. There's a self-audit questionnaire that can be a starting point for your organization to evaluate the current policies and practices and to recognize potential areas for improvement. Remember that each organization is unique, so take the time to reflect carefully on what this means for you. The questionnaire looks at your organization as a whole, the artists you work with, and the audiences you engage with. So on this slide, you can see examples of 2 questions from the toolkit with some example answers. And then following that, you'll also find question prompts with spaces to fill in your own answers, and this will help you get started on identifying your policy priorities and creating an action plan. So the toolkit can be found on our website. You can download it if you want. If you go on the homepage of our website, go to the Arts in Ireland dropdown, you'll see Equality, Diversity, Inclusion, and then it's one of the main thumbnails on our homepage. And feel free to contact the team if you have any further questions. Thanks so much.
Hannah, that was really brilliant. And as we kind of we outlined and you kind of reaffirmed is that every organization is at a different stage. You might be just kind of starting out on your EDI journey, but I think that toolkit is really, really helpful in those auditing and kind of get that journey started. Thanks a million, Hannah. And I saw a couple of questions coming in.